You know how we all have that one friend who's always investigating better ways to help you manage your finances? Well, meet Experian, your trusty BFF. And by that, I mean big financial friend. The Experian app is like having a BFF who's an expert financial profiler, ready to crack the case on your finances and help you take control like a pro. Count on Experian to help prevent your finances from reaching a gruesome outcome. This big financial friend can help you find ways to save, check your FICO score, match you with credit cards, and discover other brilliant solutions to sort out your financial mysteries. Bet your other BFFs can't do all that, And since this big financial friend is right on your phone, it's closer than any accomplice you'll ever have. Just download the Experian app and get started for free. Because honestly, the only mystery you should be solving is knowing where your finances are headed. Results will vary. Credit offers, approvals, and reward programs based on FICO Score 8 model and subject to lender terms. Offers not available in all states. See Experian.com for details.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Episode 13 of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam. Previously on The Messenger, I took a deep dive into one of the truly disturbing chapters of this entire saga, the medical abuse that Rachel alleged, along with more of that emotional terrorism, including the threat of hospice. When the news broke at the SLO airport that Rachel had been lying about being a pilot and a trauma nurse, it was pretty explosive. Rachel had been working at the airport for some time before people started to catch on to what was happening. One person caught on fairly quickly, and that person will join me here today. When you examine the various scams that Rachel had concocted, the lie about being a helicopter pilot and a trauma nurse, it was pretty outrageous. I do want to make something clear, though. I was never told by Rachel that she was a helicopter pilot or a trauma nurse. To me, it was always just a nurse and a lawyer. Those were the two careers. She had told me that she was an LVN only. She kept her cons pretty contained, it seems to me. The airport con was one that allowed for Rachel to do a few things. First, it furthered her career lies. That much is clear. Rachel will pretend that she's humble, but like many narcissists, she'll sing her praises in a matter-of-fact kind of way. I'm wondering what it takes to work at an airport and actually have a fake pilot certificate in your possession. What sort of fortitude does that take? I mean, think about it. It's technically forgery to be in possession of a falsified federal document, like a pilot certificate, right? But Rachel, she's a sophisticated scammer. As you heard me say before, she knew exactly where the line was and where it is. And she walks up to it, stares over it. I've spoken at length on our social media channels. You just have to Google the Rachel Cancer Scam and see a bunch of videos and hear some conversations. You can pick your platform if you want to hear a little bit more, and I've touched on the investigations that happened as well. Now, when I first learned about the fake pilot certificate in June of 2024, about a year ago, I did a few things. I reached out to the FAA and to the TSA, to Homeland Security as well. The FAA was very interested in this for obvious reasons. The investigation went on for 2 or 3 weeks, but it ended because of the fact that Rachel wasn't in possession of an actual hard copy of the certificate. The FAA had a tough time proving forgery with a digital document, and it seemed crazy to me, but I suppose that's the new era for law and law enforcement these days. I'm not sure. Now, during that process, while I was participating in the investigation, I wrote to Robert Isom, who's the CEO of American Airlines. I found 10 of his direct reports. I copied them in as well. And at the San Luis Obispo County Airport, that station is a joint venture between Piedmont and American. I included some folks at Piedmont in my communication. I was bold, and I was direct, and I provided a detailed complaint, along with a copy of the digital copy, which was provided to me from coworkers. I didn't hear back from a soul. I guess I wasn't surprised. But you'd think that American would have a zero-tolerance policy for forgery of this kind, especially because Rachel has a CITA card. which gives her the highest level of clearance to access an airplane and the cockpit. I found a list of local managers at the airport, including her immediate supervisor, and included all of them. The other piece of the pilot certificate issue is the one of Rachel claiming to work for Mercy Air on those medical flights and being a licensed nurse. And just like the FAA pilot database, the California Board of Nursing, it's a public database, and the nursing license number that Rachel used on that license ties out to a woman that works in Northern California as a nurse. She was disturbed by the issue, and we did have a couple of conversations. I encouraged her to file a complaint, and to this day, I don't know if she has. This is the kind of thing where people get frustrated easily when they hear it, because we all say the same thing. Isn't it a crime? You would think that these kinds of things are illegal and that she could be stopped very easily. But with both of those things, there's a little bit more to it. And what Rachel did with using both of those certificates, the pilot certificate and slapping her name on the nurse license, it's called personation. Not impersonation, but personation. She pretended to be that person. Actually, both of those people. Both of those people have the right to file a complaint. The pilot certificate was issued to a young pilot in Florida in 2006. He was, I believe, 22 or 23 at the time. And when Rachel had a barely 1-year-old daughter in 2006. Now, we found him. But like a lot of folks that are connected to this story, he wants nothing to do with it. One more thing regarding Rachel's airport scams before we start the interview. In addition to how you'll hear about how she made excuses for not being able to work and cover shifts because she was so busy being a nurse and a helicopter pilot, she also claimed that her second daughter had attempted self-harm in the worst way. Those two separate issues allowed for Rachel to get sympathy from coworkers. She was such a hero that she was experiencing this tragedy with her daughter. She was able to accomplish one of her two goals, which was to work as little as possible and keep her flight benefits. She was the hero flying around California, saving people, delivering babies. I estimate that Rachel was able to take not less than 20 trips and send family members on at least a half a dozen trips in her first couple years working for Airlines and Piedmont. She could call out, she could trade shifts and not have to work, and she could travel this country and the globe all at the same time. Quite a scam it was, and quite frankly, quite a scam it still is. This next conversation is one of a couple that I've been looking forward to sharing for quite some time. The interview is on the short side, but it's revealing. We'll have a 2-part episode coming up in a couple of weeks that's long and detailed and very good with a different person. It's been my goal really since the beginning to get people to speak up, and a number of episodes during the remainder of this season will be interviews with people that know Rachel. This is a deliberate pivot away from the cancer scam with me, in a way, so that you can hear about others' experiences with Rachel. Now, at the beginning, I didn't know if anyone had come forward. And now, things have changed. And regarding this interview over the late winter between the seasons, a couple of airline employees flew to Las Vegas to come see me from SLO. This episode belongs to one of those people. I was asked to disguise the voice and the likeness, and I've done this willingly, because, frankly, there is fear. Not just retaliation from Rachel, but also from Rachel's boyfriend, Russ. And if you've been following the story, you already understand why. The bravery shown in coming forward can't be overstated. The risk in sitting down to chat is high. And to speak honestly about working side by side is one to be admired, in my opinion. You'll hear powerful words, and that Rachel was never there to do the job. Never interested in the actual work, only the benefits and the story that she could spin. The narrative that Rachel built, layer by layer, painted her as this heroic nurse, pilot, super mom, a lifesaver. But behind the scenes, she couldn't even pull her own weight on the tarmac. And as you'll hear, the red flags were everywhere, from bizarre excuses to avoid shifts to wild claims about flying different planes, working 60-hour weeks as a nurse and a pilot. This person saw through the illusion, went to management, and watched them cover for Rachel. And saw what happened when people like Rachel and Russ operate unchecked, shielded by lies and enabled by what seems to be a broken workplace and culture. What makes this story so critical isn't just that what Rachel was doing, but how many people looked the other way, and how the system has failed to hold her accountable. People are afraid of her. Management is afraid of her. American Airlines is afraid of her, even in the face of forged documents and fabricated credentials. This witness didn't look the other way. This witness came forward. Well, let's talk. When you first met Rachel, what was your experience like with her? What were your thoughts initially about her?
My initial thoughts were that she wasn't a very strong coworker as far as she didn't pull her weight. What was the end? Yeah.
It's a blue collar job in a lot of ways when you talk about throwing bags, right?
Right. Yes.
She wouldn't really do her part in that way.
No, I feel like that was kind of an overall. A majority of the people are just there for flight benefits. They're not really there to. It's not a very cohesive, team oriented.
I mean, this is one of the few jobs that's out there where you can just say, "Listen, I'm here just for the benefits."
Right. And it's annoying.
Yeah, and you're someone that has been around the airline and are not really there for that kind of thing. You have an interest in airplanes.
Yes, I had no idea how much I was going to enjoy the airplanes at all. I got the job. I had no idea what I was getting into until I got out there, and I still to this day, when I'm marshaling a plane in or pushing a plane back out, I can't believe that I'm in charge of a multi-million-dollar aircraft.
It's gonna be a great feeling.
It is. It's amazing to me.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, you're the antithesis in a way of people like Rachel or even others that just are there for the benefits. That's all.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you first met her, you were first introduced, was she friendly to you? Was there any sort of interest on her part to be kind to you, to be social at all?
I never felt like she was very friendly, but I feel like also American is very cliquey, and I definitely was not a part of that group. I was definitely not a part of her little friend group. And I thought we were going to bond. I was really impressed when I found out that she was a pilot, because, when she was telling me that she was telling me that she was a pilot, and not only that she was a nurse that drove the helicopters, and she was trying to also get a position, because she told me she could fly the 319s and we get 319s in at the airport. And I was just, wow, here's this, girl that's flying planes and a nurse and blah, blah, blah. And I was just really impressed. But
what is the 319?
It's just a size plane. So our airport, we have 200s, CRJ 200s are a really small plane. Then a 700's a little bit bigger. And then we have 175s that are a little bit bigger. And then we have 319s, which are big. And now we just got a 737 at the airport. The other side go not American, but it's just the size of the airplane.
She presented herself in that way, just kind of matter of factly, oh, I'm a pilot, and, I can fly these 319s. And
yeah, and she was like, yeah, I've applied to be an American pilot. I'm just waiting to hear back.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a shortage of pilots right now, not only with American, but other airlines as well.
Yes, they're in dire need, which is when I started to kind of think, wow, if they're in dire need, it's strange that they're not picking this person that's already flying helicopters all around to save people. They're not picking her up. What an asset.
It would seem to me that would be an immediate red flag when you see someone that's, working as a baggage handler, but is also a pilot, but wouldn't really, I mean, the story, the drill, that wouldn't really have applied to them.
Right. 100%.
So how did that all come out? She said, just matter of factly, I am a pilot. And
she would make comments like, well, if I was the pilot of this plane, I would have done this, or I definitely wouldn't have taken off if I had seen that paper on the airfield or whatever. And I was like, so then I was intrigued, what do you mean? Oh, well, I'm a pilot.
Were there red flags in terms of what she was saying, in terms of the observations like that you just mentioned?
So what clicked with me, I started to question, I can't work all these hours. I can't work my hours here because I'm a pilot and a nurse and I travel around all the time and I work 6 days a week. I don't know one nurse that works 6 days a week.
It just doesn't have, listen, COVID, right? And that was about it.
Well, yeah, and even then, it seemed impossible to me. That's when I kind of started to question everything.
She presents as this, as a nurse, a trauma nurse, I'm guessing is what she told you she was. Did she share stories about those Mercy flights at all?
No, just that she did them, that she was constantly in the air, which was another like red flag for me. I was like, wow, and our area is really small. If people were needing to be rescued, even one day a week, it's like, where are they being rescued and why aren't we hearing about it?
Right. So she's flying around saving babies and doing all these things, and there's never anything in the news about it.
Right. And then, I can't come to work tonight because I'm saving lives. So we'll be shorthanded because you're saving lives? I don't understand.
At what point did you, excuse my candor, at what point did you call bullshit and say, I'm done with this? Or were there other things beyond her pretending to be a pilot and pretending to be a nurse?
Well, to be honest, because American is so screwed up in so many ways, and there's the camaraderie and the teamwork really isn't there. I feel like I called it pretty quickly. You can't be working 6 days a week. Because I was like, at that point, I was like, you could be a nurse. That's fine. You can be a nurse pilot. That's fine. I might believe that. I probably did believe that. The 6 days a week and you can't come to work and this is the excuse. I didn't believe that. So yeah. I told management. In fact, management just covered it up for her. One night, a friend and I were sitting in the office. I was about to start my shift and she was about to go home. And she found out that we were shorthanded and she said, oh, I'll be glad to stay. So what they did is they put her in Rachel's position so that she didn't get points. Because in our industry, if you're late or you miss a shift or you go home, whatever, you get points. And after so many points, you're supposed to be fired.
I remember Rachel talking about that.
Yeah, it's like 30 points. So I'm not saying they're consistent about that with anybody, because I know there have been other people that have had those kind of points, but I don't know anybody that consistently had that person that stayed that night didn't pick up her shift, but they used her to cover it up so that she didn't get points.
I'm comedian Negin Farsad, and I know that news and politics can be stressful, but on my podcast, Fake the Nation, we're here to make them calming, even, dare I say, fun.
We have panelists like Samantha Bee, Bob the Drag Queen, Margaret Cho, David Cross, all following the news, politics, and culture so you don't have to. Distress the news with Fake the Nation on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Why did they cover for Rachel? What do you think it was about her? Was her supervisor male? I thought the supervisor was a female.
So the general manager is a female. There's not a whole lot of supervisors, people that are acting supervisors on some shifts because they don't have enough staff.
Any suspicions as to why they may be covering? Because they're still doing it. I'm sure I'm going to tell you a story that you already know in a minute, but why do you think they did that? Any suspicions?
I honestly think they did it because, she's a pilot, she's a nurse, she's doing all this life saving, and we're going to help her out. That's just kind of what I thought. Why is she more important than somebody else that doesn't want to go to work that night?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're all should be all pulling the same direction. And clearly she wasn't doing that. And she worked real hard to develop that story. As you know from my story, you and I were introduced after the first season just recently here. So you got to hear my tale of how she set things up. This is what she does. She builds a story, she builds a plan, and then she just works that plan. You said a few minutes ago that American, is screwed up. I'm pretty sure that you're aware that when I saw the pilot's license, she had told me she was a pilot when she was in the hospital, she pretended actually through her daughter that was never really, communicating with me. But her daughter said, my mom's a pilot. And she learned how to fly because of her fear of flying and created this little thing. But it was never the job, right? That was the lie she told everyone at work. When I think about that aspect of developing that story, that pilot, this is just another, a different con on a different group of people. When I found this out, I reported Rachel to the FAA. I wrote a letter to the FAA. I wrote a letter to Robert Isom at American Airlines, the CEO, to his 10 direct reports below him. I did the same thing with Piedmont, and I did the same thing with Mercy. And it would seem to me that a fake pilot certificate with a TSA watermark would get someone's attention in the airline industry. Why do you think they just chose to ignore that? I mean, we have a text message that between Rachel and one of the employees at American where she said, I'm sending you these licenses, but I don't feel the need to defend myself. I am a pilot and I am a nurse, and that's going to be the end of our discussion. Why do you think Americans so screwed up that they wouldn't look at?
Well, I probably wouldn't have had an answer for you, except somebody over there was fired for something that they had done. I'm not exactly sure of the details, but they were fired. They fought it and they won. They're back at work now and they get 17 weeks of back pay for that time that they've been gone.
It's just so strange to me. The story that I heard was that when everything, and I'm skipping ahead, but everything happened with her divorce and her accusations against Mark. Mark met with girls at the airport, right? With the coworkers. I don't think you were there at that time, but that meeting happened. And the women at the airport were just dumbfounded that Rachel was not ever a pilot, was not ever a nurse, and never had a daughter that attempted to commit suicide. And at that point, they turned against her, and Rachel found out that they were going to testify against her from a character perspective. She went to management at that point and said, I'm being bullied by exclusion, because like you, those women said, we don't want anything to do with her.
I've heard that. I've heard that because so many people were covering for all of her stories and all of her lies, and management's point of view to the coworkers was, you covered for her, nobody made you do it.
I just don't get the falsification of a federal document. I mean, realistically, she doesn't have a paper certificate, but enough people know that she's claiming to be a pilot. What if she were to commandeer a plane? The reality is that, if she went crazy, and trust me, she's got mental health issues. I've got detailed notes. I've shared some of it. There's a danger potentially with someone like her. The nurse's license, same deal. I tracked the woman who actually is in possession of that nursing license, and that woman's never met Rachel. She's up in Sacramento, and she had no idea what was going on, but none of the complaints I filed could be dealt with because she never treated a patient, just like she never boarded a plane with the pilot certificate. It's like a con person, a con man, or a criminal that knows exactly how to go right up to the line, a stalker, right? That knows how to get right to the end of the line and not cross it and break the law.
Lazy people get away with it. And somebody said, well, it's because that guy's, he's handsome, he's a good looking guy. It's like it's the good looking person phenomenon where, they're just, they can't escape by. And I think that's kind of bullshit, but it works for her and it works for others, unfortunately.
It's worked for her entire life since she was a kid, since she was a model and a beauty pageant contestant. She was raised doing those beauty pageants. I mean, that piece of it is not a lie, right? That's what she was doing, but she got all of that training, all of that finishing and, that lifestyle that you and I know nothing about, but she got all of that. And then she ended up using it for nefarious purposes, right? To con people with it. Talk to me about any sort of confrontation that you may have had. Did you have any arguments with her? Did you confront her on anything at all?
I never did. I like I said, I didn't run in her circles, and I'm kind of a stubborn as far as, once I find out or I feel like you're not worth my time, I just stay away from you. And so I kind of had my own little pack of people that, worked hard, and we kind of had the same values, and I stayed away from the people that I couldn't stand. And she was one that I had no respect for.
Were those people, were you aware of how they were defending her after, you said, listen, this is nonsense. There's no way she's a pilot. There's no way she's a nurse. Did people defend her to you at all?
No, but a couple of people have defended her to me since then. Although you don't really know because, Mark is really crazy. And this is how I found out that she claims that he came and threw paint on her car and turned at the airport. And I was like, how did I not hear about any of that? Well, you don't know how crazy he is. I kind of know that he's not as crazy as you think.
Were you aware, I'm kind of skipping around here, that there was a fist fight between Russ and Mark at the airport on December 18th of 2023? So right after Russ and Rachel were found out, which was the December 13th, the week before, Mark showed up at the airport and found Russ and Rachel kissing in the parking lot.
I either wasn't there or I did see it or hear about it. As of December.
So rumors hadn't really flown about that. It sounds like it wasn't something that was widely known that they actually had a fight.
No, I didn't hear about it.
What's the scuttlebutt now? You said people are defending her now, even after this podcast has come out. That small airport community, including people at the county, all know what's happening, what she's done.
It's completely mixed. There are people that think she's nuts and can't believe she's still there, or that she's arrogant that you did all this. You can still show your face. How do you do that? There's a lot of that, and then there's some support like, oh, well, Mark was really mean. He was a bad guy.
Mark being a bad guy doesn't justify lying that he abused her physically or the girls physically. I mean, that's a horse of a different color. You were around, or certainly heard rumors about a man whose name we don't use, but who was a victim of Rachel's, in a sense, a man who had a consensual relationship with Rachel, and then Rachel claimed to have been sexually assaulted by him. What happened? What was your level of awareness after that happened?
I wasn't aware of any of it. I found out from you. I had no, like I said, I wasn't in any of those circles of the parties and the bullshit. I don't have any tolerance for it.
What about the Rachel and Russ relationship? I think you've had some experience seeing it and hearing about what's going on.
After you started, they started hooking up or being a couple or whatever they were, dating. I don't know. They were constantly on top of each other, kissing on the ramp, arms around each other, snuggling on the ramp. And it was so inappropriate, in my opinion. And there's another couple that works there that were also very huggy, feed me. And they actually wrote policy that was not appropriate. And they can't do that at work.
I heard recently that, Rachel and Russ had gone on a vacation in, I believe, October. They'd gone to Paris, but they couldn't find people to cover their shifts. Obviously, it's one of the perks and one of the things that happens in the airline industry where you guys trade shifts off. They couldn't find anyone, and they ended up having to pay people to cover their shifts.
Yes. Desperate people that burn other people is kind of sweet justice that they have to pay people to take their shifts down instead of being a level person and being honest and somebody covering for you and you covering for them.
How bad do you have to be in order for people to say, I'm not covering for you? These are people that got burned.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Tell me, in terms of that relationship with Russ, you knew Russ, obviously. Did you have any sort of communication with him? What's your feeling about him?
I didn't have much contact
when you came to Vegas a few weeks ago to meet me, and your friend had reached out and said, listen, we're coming to town and we'd like to have coffee and talk a little bit. She had mentioned that she had a lot of interaction with Russ, and, hopefully I can wrangle her to spend some time and talk about her observations, but I don't hear anything overwhelmingly positive about him.
No, he's kind of cocky and arrogant, and it's all F this and F that, and let's file more complaints for HR or whatever the union is there. And he's one of the stupid ones. He just is cursing and acting like Mr. Stud and acting really tough. And I don't know, it's just
That's consistent with what I've heard. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've heard the same kinds of things. So in terms of the HR complaints you just referenced, what kinds of things? So Russ is part of this group, Rachel's part of this group that find things to go to HR with from a union perspective?
Most of the group there is just very disgruntled, and maybe some of it's rightful and some of it's just petty.
I so appreciate your time, but is there anything I missed that you wanted to talk about? You and I have had a lot of communication since we've met, and I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anything that you wanted to make sure that I got out there.
We weren't searching planes, but saying that we did and signing paperwork. Well, documents saying that we searched planes. In the morning, your plane is searched before it leaves, right? And then after the planes are gone, oh, who searched Dallas? Oh, just say I did it. And I was sick to my stomach.
Were Rachel and Russ part of that?
I honestly don't remember who was on what shift when and who did what. And I couldn't do it. I was sick to my stomach. We have this TSA guy. His name is Roger. He comes around and his job is to sneak on planes. His job is to put a bag on your bag card that doesn't belong there. And his job is to sneak around on the ramp. And you have to challenge him. And he'll show you the wrong credentials, and he'll try to screw you up by asking you a question. And he does a great job. He's really good at what he does. But he was on one of our 319s one night while I was cleaning, and I thought, well, if he's here and, I'll have him trapped because he was watching me search the plane and clean, I'm just going to ask him a million questions. And so I did. I know this is totally off topic, but, I was asking him, if they found things, can they tell where something is? Like, let's just say our planes left and it had a problem. Could they tell where that problem was? And he was like, absolutely. They could probably almost pinpoint exactly where that problem was, which, I was on those planes every single night. And I could live with myself if my plane left and I didn't search something and I missed. I know we're humans and we can miss things. That is very possible, but to the best of my ability, I don't want to. It's just like searching the plane in the morning. All these there's a PAX Air panel on the bottom. There's lots of panels on the bottom. You have to look at all those panels, Somebody could easily get on the ramp and put something in one of those panels.
We're seeing people get into planes, sneaking around. That woman that got on that flight and got to Paris. And there's a bunch of that stuff. And this is not a good time for the airline industry or air traffic control right now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'll leave you with this thought with thanks. The difference between someone like you and someone like Rachel and Russ is that you're a worker. You're not there to bullshit. You're there to work. And that to me is the difference, one of the differences. And by the way, you're a truth speaker as well. There's probably many differences, but that's what stands out.
Thank you.
Powerful words and a powerful interview. As I mentioned, this is the first of two with coworkers. And if we're able to convince others to come forward and speak, I'll make space and time for anyone that wants to do that. I stand by my conviction that Rachel needs to be stopped. When this story began last season, and when I started writing originally around January of 2024, it was my story of heartache and heartbreak about love and loss. Go back to those first handful of episodes in season 1. You can hear it. It was emotional. But it's now evolved into something else. It's evolved into this story that allows friends and former friends, lovers, loved ones, coworkers, all to have their voices and their experiences heard. There's still much work to be done to stop her. As the season moves forward, you'll hear a conversation between Rachel and Mark, one that he recorded, a long conversation, a detailed conversation, and admissions by Rachel. I'm also going to read through the findings of a detailed police investigation into the situation between Mark and Rachel, which actually portrays Rachel as a liar and someone who obstructed justice. This report does that in great detail. The sprint to the finish line for this podcast will be a bumpy road with a lot of detail, high drama, and the voices of others. Coming up on the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam, I'll share a long email in Rachel's voice, the one I built out of her actual voice with a clone. And she sent that to me after losing our baby regarding her cancer treatment. Rachel's vacation to Mexico seemed anything but relaxing. She ratcheted up the drama with me. Next time on The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam.